Alrighty, let's take a look at how to use our graphing calculator to graph some of these different trig functions. So in a previous video, I mentioned that we can use our graph. I drew the graphs by hand, the tangent and the cotangent curves by hand, because I wanted you to have a feel for why the graphs looked like they did. But in reality, we're going to use our graphing calculator to sketch these things. So just remember that when we did this before, I said to choose an appropriate window to view your graphs. And we've been using -2 pi, and I actually typed -2 pi as my x minimum to 2 pi as the range of values on the x-axis, and then pi over 2 as our x scale. I actually type pi over 2, puts tick marks every pi over 2 radians, which is handy when we're viewing these graphs. All right, so if I want to go ahead and graph the tangent x function, all right, remember I said that this guy is strictly increasing. It has vertical asymptotes at the odd multiples of pi over 2, has zeros at the integer multiples of pi over 2, and in fact, we see that indicated here. So remember, each of these tick marks is pi over 2 radians apart. So this guy's positive pi over 2, and you can see the vertical asymptote here. This is positive pi. Positive 3 pi over 2 is another vertical asymptote. If I want to graph cotangent, remember cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, and I'm actually going to use the reciprocal key, which is this x to the -1 power. Okay, so if I graph this guy, I see that now my graph is strictly decreasing. All those curves are coming downward. My vertical asymptotes have shifted to where the zeros were in the tangent graph, and the zeros have shifted to where the asymptotes are. All right, so here I see the vertical asymptotes you can visualize them at all of these integer multiples of pi. So this guy here is positive pi, this guy here is negative pi. Okay, if I want to graph then the secant of x, remember secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So I'll graph cosine x and take the reciprocal. And I should see that on in the same window, because I haven't changed my window at all. There you go. If I'd like to graph cosecant, remember cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so I'll just change cosine to sine. Here's my graph of cosecant. If I have something like the cosecant of 2x, all right, so instead of graphing the sine of x, I'll graph the sine of 2x. Close my parentheses here, and then take the reciprocal of that. All right, so remember, when we replace x with 2x, that decreases the period of the graph. In fact, the graph you'll see more cycles of the graph on the screen, twice as many cycles. Okay, I could do something like, cosecant 2x if I wanted, plus 3, move the whole thing up by 3. So again, this is the equation in your calculator of the cosecant of 2x plus 3. So you should see that whole thing shifted up by 3 units. And, hopefully you can kind of visualize that there's a sine wave you know, kind of a corresponding sine wave that kind of goes right along with this graph, right? So if we were to have to sketch it by hand, we could sketch the corresponding sine wave and, you know, go from there.